Hello and welcome back to another video in the model railway series. Well, as I said at the very beginning of this series, it was going to be a journey of learning and without doubt a number of mistakes along the way. Well, we've hit one of those obstacles. I'm not sure whether it's a mistake, but it's certainly taxing my learning around the building of this model railway. And as you might have guessed from previous videos, it has something to do with the electronics. So what I'll do is I'll just get set up to show you what the problem is, and I'll see you back here in a few minutes. So we can now see the entire run of the layout that I've done so far. And so the problem I'm having is, and I hope I can demonstrate it with this 08 shunter, is that there's inconsistent power that appears to be going to the track. It run over the first point very well. We get to the next point, and it stalls at the electrofrog even though it's fully connected up. We'll get to the next point. Stores at the electrofrog again, even though it's fully connected up, and the same thing at the last one. So, and in terms of the various points, sometimes it's stalling and sometimes it isn't. So, if I throw this point a couple of times, we may well find that this time round the 08 shunter will actually go across it completely, in which case it did at that time. So. What I wasn't sure was whether it was where the power problem was, whether it was a power coming from the bus wire into the various bits, because they're all connected up correctly, or whether it was the power of the connections to the various points that was the problem. So I had a look on a number of forums and websites to see how I could test this, and I came across the problem that running DC, it's very difficult to test the current that's coming out of the track. Running DCC, it's very difficult to test the power that's coming out of the track without some quite expensive electrical equipment. So the other thing I wasn't sure of was whether or not it was the locos. So I've tried both of the two locos I've got, and they tend to be very similar in terms of their performance on the track. See if I can get this one to connect up. The Jint is a little bit less temperamental in the class 08, but it's still stalling over most of the points, but seems to run a little bit more freely in the class 08. So I wasn't sure whether it was the performance of the locos and they might just need servicing, or whether it was power coming up on the track. So with the problem with not being able to test, not having the equipment to test DCC, I was trying to work around this, and then one of my thoughts was to look at putting the old 08 DC shunter on the track that I know has been recently serviced. You may remember from the very first video me servicing that one. So I did that, I placed that one on the track, and I'll just show you how that one works. Okay, just to be clear, what I have done is I've switched the control unit to DC power, so it's no longer running DCC. So, and that's what you can hear is the 08 shunter picking up the power. It's fairly noisy, I must admit. This runs fairly smoothly, so there is probably something about servicing the various vehicles. It's still stalling over the points, but the power pickup is a bit better than the track. Again, stalling over some of the points. But as you can see, it's running a little bit better than the other two. So there might be something about having to service the other two locos. I'll just take this 08 off because it's quite noisy. So having checked that it's not necessarily the locos that's causing the problem, so it's not the engines that are causing the problem, that it is actually power supply, it then occurred to me that having run the DC loco across the track, that it is possible to check the current coming out of the track for DC using a simple amp meter or a simple current meter. So that's what I did, and I'll just show you the various readings I'm getting from across the unit now. Well, the first thing I did was to just connect 2 wires straight into the power unit so that it wasn't going anywhere, so I was just reading what was coming straight out of the power unit rather than through the bus wire. And I'll just show you the reading I get when I connect these wires up to the I suppose voltmeter, whatever we want to call it, amp meter. I hope you can see the unit here. So I'll just place the 2 wires that are coming out of the power unit on, and whilst it says minus, I've just connected them around the wrong way. It tends to go up to about 9.8 to just over 9.8 or just under 9.8, so 9.79, something like that. So I know that what's the power that's coming directly out of the unit on DC is around 9.8 volts, I believe that is. Hoping that's what that little V with the funny arrow over the top means. So about 9.8. So now I know what's coming out, I can see whether that same level of power is actually reaching the various bits of the track. And I'll just demonstrate a couple of bits on the track so that you can see that. So what I've done now is I've connected the DCC, but in DC controller, back up to the main bus wire, and what I should expect now is that throughout the track there to be around that same 9.8, 9.7 voltage across the various bits. So I'll just show you some various readings that we're getting. The first one is from the very first bit of track, the standard bit of track. So as we can see from that reading, it's going up to reading exactly as the same amount of power that's coming out of the controller. So that means that there's very little power drop-off between the bus wire and this very first bit of track that I'm testing. We'll now do the very first point, and this is without the non-electric frog. Sorry, the bit that's not being powered through the seat motor onto the electric frog unit. So this is just the standard bit of track. And once again, once you see it's giving me the same output. Just need to get it connected properly, as we're getting from the DC track. And now I'll show you this is the very first point, the one that it runs over nicely with the electrofrog connection. So see if I can get my arm out of the way, and I'll just connect it up. There we go. So we're getting a similar reading again, 9.8, 9.7 coming out of there. So what I'll do is I'll quickly throw this point so that you can see that we're getting the same reading both sides. Get my arm out of the way. Of course I need to do it from the opposite side. And once again around 9.8, so very little drop off of power going through there. So I know this point, I know I can connect the points up correctly because that one's working fine. We'll now do some of the other bits of track so we can have a look at that. So what I've done now is I've moved the across to the very first point where the engine, all of the engines are stalling on, and what I will do is just first of all do the track that's directly in front of that point, which is getting a feed direct from the the bus wire, the track bus wire. So if I do that first, and once again it's going up to around the same sort of level. And now I'll do the non-electro-frog fed part of the point. Once again it's going up to roughly the same level, and now we'll do the electro-frog part of the point. I just need to move that slightly, hope you can still see this. And now, depending on where I place the unit, depends on whether or not I'm going to get any current. So from that bit there, there's nothing coming through there. If I come a bit further down, this is the same frog point, it's right up to the same thing. We have broken the connections here, so this is getting feed from the seat motor, but for some reason just here there are places where we're not getting any current coming through. Otherwise I can see here now, again, it's now appearing to be working fine. And that's what I meant by it being fairly intermittent, particularly on this point. So we'll now move along to the other two where it's less intermittent and there clearly is a problem with the way it's connected up. So once again, we'll test a bit of track before the point first. And this is the track that's in between that last point we did and the next point where it was stalling again. And the track here is telling us that we've got a good connection between the bus wire and the track. And now if I do the non-electro-frog point section, let me just get that in a position and then come around to test it. So first of all, the non-electro-frog fed bit, get it around the right way, and again up, and now we'll do the electro-frog bit where it's fed by the frog, and that's very, very low. You can see that wherever I place this on the electro-frog, there's hardly any power getting through to it, so no wonder the thing's stalling on this one here. Now what I don't know is whether it's the and in fact I'm now getting nothing at all. I've in touch this wee connection here. So nothing from that, and I would say that it's exactly the same on the other one where there's no power getting through to the electro-frog point. Now what I don't know, and I still need to test, is whether or not it's the way I've connected the electro-frog feed from the bus wire, which is the least likely because I've connected them all roughly the same, or whether I've just got some rather bad connections on the frog. So I'll just show you what I mean. So whether I've got a poor connection just here, with the wire coming, where the wire comes up and feeds the electro-frog, or whether it's a poor connection underneath where the frog is switching from one side to the other, whether the actual wire's coming in on there, whether I've got a bad connection there. And it's the same thing for the other point that I've done. So it appears I've got one point motor that's been the very first one I did that's working perfectly. I've got one that is fairly intermittent, and then I've got two that aren't working. So clearly my skills around connecting the electro-frog isn't ideal, but I also think there's something about me having to service the two locos. So what we'll do now is we'll quickly go across to the table and I'll talk to you about what it is I intend to do. Well, you can see the problem I'm having with the electrics. It wasn't to be expected. I did say that right at the very beginning of the video. This wasn't going to be our strong point in terms of making the model railway. Having now worked out how I can test the points, there are a couple of things I'm going to do. The first one is I'm going to reconnect or recheck the way the electrofrog point section of the point motor is connected to the main bus wire, and just make sure that that is fitted correctly and that it's picking up the full amount of power from the bus wire. I don't expect that to be the problem, because that would be a simple solution. If that's all it is, then that would be the easy option, I suppose. I suspect that it's not going to be that, and what I'm actually going to have to do is to remove the affected seat motors from the layout and then test them over here actually on the workbench. So put some power into to them and then check that there's sufficient power coming out. And if there is sufficient power coming out of the seat motors, then I know that it's the way I've connected the wires and actually onto the point, and I've just got some very bad connections onto the points. There's a bit of a, I suppose, either a dilemma or I suppose maybe a little bit of serendipity, a little bit of luck, I suppose, is that as I think I mentioned right at the very beginning, that I may have to move the layout from its current locations to somewhere else. Well, it looks as if in December I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to have to be moved out of here before December, of this particular room before December, and I'm going to have to move it into another room not too far away, but it is slightly smaller. So I suppose I'm now in this position where I know I'm going to have to move the layout. There's some problems with the wiring. Do I fix the problems with the wiring on this section and then be moving it in a month's time anyway, or do I begin to move it, dismantle it here, get the room that it's moving into a position where I can start fitting it up, and then review what the layout's going to look like. Let me know what you think. I'm edging on the side of actually just starting to dismantle it and move it into the new location rather than do it here and then having to get it all working and then discovering that I'm going to have to take it all apart again anyway. So that's my dilemma, and I think, as I say, I am going on the side that I should probably start dismantling it. That won't stop me from testing the connections on the various point motors. The other thing I'm thinking about is whether or not I should, when I get the new, because I need some more point motors for the rest of the layout anyway, whether I should get the self-latching ones. I'm not quite sure whether they're an improvement in terms of the way they work to the non-self-latching ones that I've currently got on the layout. Be interested in people's views on those as well. So for the rest of this video, what I am going to do is to, as I say, I'll take the point motors off the affected point motors off the layout, assuming that it's not just a connection to the main bus wire, and start testing those. And then in the next month or future videos, I think what I will do is start doing some modelling. And what I might do is actually start looking at that 08 shunter, the DC 08 shunter, and seeing if I can repair the bodywork and get it perhaps resprayed into a BR black early emblem rather than its current late BR sort of blue with yellow. It's not a particularly good model, but it gives me a chance to do a little bit of practicing on it. The other thing I will need to do is to start building the platform, which may have to be slightly shorter because of the new location. So what I'll do is I'll get on with that now then. Hello again. Well, here we are back at the workbench to test out the electrofrog points. As you remember, we tested the track using some DC current going through it, and we discovered that the power going to the electrofrog point, the insulated bit in the centre, was particularly low, and that's why we were having problems running across some of the points. So what I've done is I've disconnected the point motor from the layout, and I'm now going to test the various wires and just double check that it was whether it was the connection to the frog that was the problem, or the connection coming out of the point motor that was the problem. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use my old Hornby DC unit turned up to full power, and we'll just play the electricity into the point motor and then check whether it's coming out the other end at the correct level. I've checked using my meter, and coming out of the Hornby controller is about 18 volts. I'm assuming it's volts anyway, so 18 coming out, which is showing up on here. So we'd expect 18 to come out from the other end of the point, or at least very close to 18 coming out from the other end of the point. Before I show we have a look at me doing that, you may notice that we're in a slightly different location than normal. And I said earlier we may have to move from where the current layout is to another area, and I'm in the process of doing that. So the other area is slightly smaller. It does offer me an opportunity to redo some of the stuff that hasn't quite gone the way I intended it initially. So it does offer me an opportunity to do that and relook at the layout. We'll come on to that probably next month. I'm just in the process of clearing the other room out where the layout's going to be. So let's crack on with the point motor and have a look at what that, whether there is power coming out of that. So I'll just set it up and we can have a look. So here we are. I'll just show you the output from the old Hornby controller to show you that the number of volts that are coming out of that. So I'll just connect this up to the two connectors here. So if we put one to there and one to there, I don't know if you can see that, but it says 18.29, so about 18.29 to 28, so something around that. So we'd expect something similar to come out from the point motor. I'll just put those two down, and I'm going to connect this up now to the point motor. So here's the diagram that you may remember from an earlier video of how the point motor is set up. What I will need to do is to connect the DC output from this coming in via the 12 volt DCC there, so to the D, the blue-brown there, and the other wire into the 0 volts output there. And then what should then happen is if I then connect the controller, the amp meter, the voltmeter, to the various crossover points, we should then be able to see what's coming out through the frog motor. So what I should do is I'll get that set up now and then we'll be straight back. So here we are again, and I've set it all up. I'll just place that one against there. So that's the DC, well, the AC, where the ACC would be coming in to. And now what I need to do is to just take the black and cover it up to the electrofrog out. So we'll see if we get any power coming through there. As you can see, it's very low, so it's 0.6.3, so no wonder we were not getting any output here. So quite clearly the problem is the way the frog's been soldered together. I'm guessing that there's one of the soldering joints isn't particularly good. So I now know that the problem is somewhere around these soldering joints, which means that what I will need to do now is desolder all of this, and then in future when I come to fit them, once I've relayed the layout in the new location, is I will check this output and the way I've just done it there on each of these before I fit the frog. I may even look at, as I said, I think earlier on in this particular video, look at getting some slightly different types of electrofrog points, the self-latching ones, which I think I don't have to solder. So I've now completed that. I'll just do some desoldering here, and then we'll come back and talk about what we're going to do for the rest of, whilst we're waiting to move the layout into the new location. So we're all ready to start desoldering. I have some I think it's copper that's for desoldering. I've tried this once before. It's not, I don't find it particularly easy, but it does seem to work. So I'll just start desoldering each of these wires. Warm some of the old solder up a little bit. Solder takes quite a bit to get it flowing again. I think it's just starting to flow. In fact, that wire's come right off, so I just need to place it on there and give it a good couple of seconds. Still a fair bit of solder on there, but as I say, it takes a bit of getting this correct. I just do the other wire. And again, it's just starting to flow. Not sure if I'm using this correctly, so if anyone can tell me how I should be using this, it would help. Please leave your comments. I know someone's mentioned about my soldering before, and it certainly helped when people have left comments about making sure that I heat both sections and that side of thing. I'm not sure if you can see this, but I have managed to desolder this particular point motor. It's damaged the edges, the plastic sort of protection for the copper coils inside a little bit, where I've been trying very hard to get all of the solder off the connections. I haven't done particularly well. I'm not sure if this is going to be still usable. We can try it out, but as I think I've already said, I might try some different types of point motor, the self-latching ones. So, but we may be able to salvage these. So another one that I've done here that I've now managed to desolder, this one I haven't taken all of the solder off, and I don't know whether it would be because the way I'm using this desoldering copper, whether I'm using it correctly or not, but it doesn't seem to pick very much of the solder up. I was hoping it would work a little bit easier than it has done. So what I will need to do in the meantime is I might just try and file some of that solder off and see how that works. However, as we're about to move the layout, that can wait for a little while until I've managed to get the disconnect the two baseboards that are in where the current location, getting ready to move them to the new location. So what I do plan to do is to start producing the main platform area. I know roughly how what that's going to look like and how long it's going to be. I'm once again using a card kit from the scalescenes, just because the other one worked, I think worked very well and was relatively easy to follow. So we're going to start on doing that now. So once again, here's the instructions for the station platform. It's R008 and it's from the scalescenes, downloadable. You can download it as many times as you like once you've paid for it. I can't remember exactly how much it cost, but it certainly wasn't a great deal of money. So the first thing we need to do, it says, number one, is to glue to heavyweight card the platform sides and the structural frames. So here's the platform sides. So I shall now glue that directly onto the card. Well, there we are. I've stuck the first side down, so the platform sides down. I may have to do more of these depending on how long the platform is going to be. I have it in my head to scale size. I'll come on to that later when we start to construct it. The other thing that I've done, and it says it on the instructions, is to then, once you've stuck it down, is to, before you start constructing it, is to spray it with some matte varnish just to hold, to protect the printed surface. So I have done that. The matte varnish that I'm using is this one here. I wouldn't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Pabio, and I got it from Smith's. It's an artist matte varnish. I'm assuming that will do the job just as well as anything else. I probably paid over the odds for it. So what I'll do now is put this one to one side, let that dry, and then stick the rest of the ones down, and once I've done that, we'll be straight back. So I finished doing most of the well, I finished with the first bit of starting the platform or modelling the platform. There's a number of pieces here, so there's the platform sides. These bits are just left. I assume I'm going to glue those on at some stage a bit later on. There's some platform ledge layers here that is the next bit that we'll need to do. These are the support structural frame bits. I haven't quite worked out how those work yet. Having looked at the instructions, it's not completely clear to me, but I expect once I start putting it together, that will become more obvious. And then this is the bit that you watched me do earlier that's now been covered with the matte varnish. It actually hasn't come out too badly with the matte varnish going over the top. So that's about all there is for this video in terms of this model making. I shall crack on with this, and hopefully you'll see it starting to come to shape in the next video. Well, there we go. That is just about all we've got time for in this month's video. Sorry about the delay between the last video and this one coming out. Unfortunately, holiday and then work got in the way of the important stuff of doing the model railway. Going forward, we really do need to get the new or the room where the layout's now going to be based cleared, so that I can start fitting the baseboards. My intention is to fit all of the baseboards for the entire layout in one go, whereas previously I just did one section. I was just doing one section at a time. The other thing I need to do is just check the measurements and adapt the layout to fit that. So I need to just work out how the layout's going to run and whether it will be exactly the same as the previous one. So hope you enjoyed the video. A bit too much of me talking and not enough of trains running. Hopefully we'll rectify that real soon. I hope to see you all in the next video. Thank you very much.